And we are live. Yeah, thank you. Welcome to the latest episode of Try Imitating this, Season 1, Episode 3. Thanks to everybody who has listened to the previous two episodes. Last week's guest was Pete North, political commentator amongst other things. And this week's guest is a poet, an author, and a former cult survivor, Mr. Arthur Chappell, good mate of mine as well. How are you, mate? You good?
Yeah, not so bad at all. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's good to see you.
Yeah, lovely to have you on here, mate. And yeah, go on, mate.
Yeah, doing all right. Yeah. So, yeah.
Good stuff.
So,
yeah.
Do you want me to start with a poem, or give you an idea of the kind of stuff I do on the open mic thing?
Well, I'll tell you what, yeah, you've got a couple of appearances coming up very soon at an open mic and a couple of poetry festivals as well. So yeah, do you want to open up with a poem, and then we'll do a quick review of the week?
Yeah, sure. Basically, well, this one's one of my early poems. It's called "Round and Round and Round, Round and Round." It's called, and it goes, "Our time machine's broken. We don't know how to stop. We're all going to die of deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. I knew we shouldn't have nicked it from a second-hand shop. There's no instruction book to tell us what to do. We're all going to die of deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. Something just exploded. Snap, crackle, pop. There's no instruction book to tell us what to do. That's why they left an out of order sign on top. Past or future destined, I haven't got a clue. How long has it been now? I really need the loo. Something just exploded. Snap, crackle, pop. That's why they left an out of order sign on top. How long has it been now? I really need the loo. I knew we shouldn't have nicked it from a second-hand shop. Past or future destined, I haven't got a clue. Our time machine's broken. We don't know how to stop."
Wonderful, Arthur. Lovely verse, lovely verse.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Nicky from a second-hand shop. There you go. That's the problem. You don't get the instruction manual, do you? Yeah. And you don't get a 28-day returns policy either.
That was a very good example of a branch of poetry called verse, which was very popular with Rudyard Kipling.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you write that, Arthur? Can I ask?
That was probably quite an early one, so probably sometime in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
It's actually a pantoum, which is why it has that structure of repeating lines. So I thought, well, why would anyone repeat the same information again? And I thought, well, maybe they're stuck in a time warp where they're just having to go round and round and round. Set the poem around that, so they just like the sense that it's just going to carry on forever.
Or you're writing a speech for like a party political conference or something like that, just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Yeah,
really, a time warp. I think someone was still basically giving the manifestos from the 1950s.
Well, there you go. Yeah, well, the thing, everything's on a postmodern look now, I guess. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and very nice one. I really appreciate it. We'll do another poem later, no question. Should we just compare beers tonight then? So I'm actually having to behave myself at the minute, just because I've had some health problems recently. So I'm on this alcohol-free Sam Smith's Brown Ale. Arthur, what you got, mate?
I'm actually on a pomegranate IPA from Bermondsey Beer. It's actually a 5.9, so it's quite a strong one. Yeah, so it's quite nice. I've got a 1 pint of it though, so I've got some crack and rum to follow later on.
Well, that's it. Yeah, well, we're planning to go for about an hour, but if it goes deep, and we end up staying the night, then they might have to open the cracker. Who knows? Yeah. Largo, what about you, fella? What are you on with?
I've got Mau Classica, which is just a bog standard 5% cooking lager, but it is cold and it is fizzy, so it's hitting the spot.
Did you say a cooking lager?
Well, a bog standard, like a chef might use it to make a bitter, for example.
Right,
A batter.
A batter, right? Okay, right. Okay,
chip shop beer batter,
Yeah, I was wondering about that, because I've heard of cooking whiskey and things like cooking wine and things like that, but yeah, never. But yeah, okay.
Like pub chef might use it for, back in the day, the chefs used to save beer from the drip trays and use it for the batter.
On the fish or whatever. Yeah.
Mao's like that. It's cold, it's 5%, it hits the spot.
Yeah.
You
could actually get drunk going to the chippy.
I don't know so much now, but I think back in the 80s, beer was used for batter.
Nice.
Yeah, you can still get, in the supermarket, you can still get beer battered cod and beer battered haddock and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's very nice, actually.
Yeah, I don't eat meat, but I do eat fish. So it's something I keep my eye out for. Yeah,
absolutely. So mackerel's very good for you.
But they don't do beer battered mackerel, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
No.
So just a quick one before we go on to one of the main things. I mean, I introduce you properly, Arthur. So you've been you've been writing poetry and other creative stuff for decades now. For the best part of 30 years or 30 plus years.
Yeah, I started the writing after I came out of the cult, basically, because it was basically the cult wouldn't allow us to actually write anything down because it might incriminate them if they found any.
Right.
Yeah.
I decided to start writing again, and at first I was writing prose only for like short stories for a while, and then eventually, because I was going to a lot of creative writing workshops where they're mostly poets, so basically probably short stories they were often too long to actually read out at the reading groups, and so I started writing poetry as well, and then found I actually got a book for doing that as well. I mean, I was always inspired by poetry. I mean, I saw John Cooper Clarke in about 1978 at a Rock Against Racism gig, and I've always been impressed by his stuff. I actually saw him at the first of the Morecambe Poetry Festivals 2 years ago. I'm actually giving a talk on poetry and pubs at the third one this year next month in September. So I'm actually on the bill on the posters with Pam Ayres on that one. So, because she's the main guest there, so
that's when you know you've made it, Arthur. When you're on a poster with Pam Ayres. How many people could say they've been on a poster with Pam Ayres? Not many.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meet her. I do like her stuff. She's actually fun. I'm looking forward to the Poetry Festival.
Yeah, well,
he's the Woodstock of poetry.
Yeah, well, she was poet laureate for a period, but was she poet laureate at one point?
No, the poet Caroline Duffy was last year's guest of honour, and she was poet laureate.
Right. Okay. That have them confused or something. Yeah. Okay.
But I think Pam Ayres would do. Pam Ayres would be a worthy contender for poet laureate if the current one's actually stepped down. I think it's still Caroline Duffy at the moment. I'm not sure.
Right. Yeah.
I know Simon Armitage did the role for a while as well.
Yeah, like I said, you just went live there. Did you want to jump in with something? Or?
Pardon me?
Yeah, did you have to do that? Because I think you were just sort of threatening to say something there, so I just wondered if you had to add that.
No, I was just moving seating positions. Sorry.
Oh, right. Okay, no worries.
Charger in, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so the other thing there, Artie, because we're going to come to because that was one of my things I was going to make a little joke about was, number one litmus test for if you're dealing with an oppressive person or not is, do they let you keep a diary? And I think, that they don't then read, and if they don't let you keep a diary and not read it, then I'd run for the hills personally. But sometimes
absolutely,
but it's one of those signs that you're in an oppressive situation, and it doesn't get a lot worse than being in a cult. I've listened to talks by a few cult survivors. I've also listened to some of your talk from a few years ago.
There's one on YouTube if people want to look out for it.
Yeah, Daily Motion, isn't it? Is it Daily Motion? The one you sent us in the week. I've sort of seen bits of it there. There's loads of stuff to deal with this week. So
Yeah, that was one from. It was actually the Leeds Humanist
Yeah.
group I gave that talk to. But I've given a similar talk in various places. But I actually gave that talk in
Yeah.
Bristol there actually just after I broke my leg on the way in. So basically, yeah. So
You
I'm
broke
setting it
your leg on
out.
the way in.
Oh, sorry, mate. That's my doorbell. Don't worry. Ignore me.
Oh, yeah. Wondered what that was.
Oh, good God.
Yeah, sorry.
Pizza's arrived. Good. It's like being on pirate radio, isn't it?
So I mean, I can go over how I actually got into the cult if you like. I mean, that's something I can pitch on. But I actually got
Yeah.
seduced into it because a girl I was actually trying to date actually invited me over to a meeting on transcendental
Sorry.
meditation.
Let me just mute Largo's mic now. I think he's got a guest in there. And I'll just try and unmute you in a second.
Phone
Sure.
on. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he's chosen to mute himself. Right. Okay. He's chosen to mute himself. Good. So yeah. So go on, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Well, I was literally seduced into the cult. I was actually trying to date a girl that I was trying to buy books off for a while, and then she suddenly invited me to a meeting on transcendental meditation at
Yeah.
Manchester University. I was living in Manchester then. I live in Preston now. This is 1981, and I was only 19.
Yeah.
Basically, she invited me to a meeting. I thought, oh, this is a nice date. So I didn't know anything about meditation. I thought it sounded a bit weird. But I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I'm just going over with this nice girl, go for a drink afterwards, and see how it goes. And 4.5 years later, I got out of a celibate cult with my head absolutely scrambled because it was a standard recruitment technique for them to flirt with somebody and draw them in by that method. I did it to a few
Good.
people myself as well.
Yeah, 'cause in my notes for this, I did write that down, Arthur. I asked this because you alluded to the fact that I think you kind of say you had the hots for this girl. Is that fair?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've written here, was that leveraged against you? Question mark. You know, and that's a pretty dark thing to leverage against anybody. Actually, it's a pretty, but it was a recruitment technique to do that.
Yeah.
You know, for female members to attract male attention and then leverage that.
Yeah. Well, anything they could get hold of on you, any weakness that you had would be used as leverage against you. Anything that you had doubts about, any concerns. I mean, I was actually basically pilloried for asking too many questions because I was actually quite awkward at first. I found out after like being there were 6 months in probation with the group, and then you get fully initiated basically after a while. Some people did it a lot quicker. I know somebody who actually got initiated within 48 hours. It took me 6 months. And I found out eventually that after 2 months, they were seriously considering throwing me out because I was asking too many awkward questions. They was stop asking questions, or it was basically use the potty or get off or get out the pot, basically. And,
Shit or get off the pot. Yeah, the odd swear word's fine, by the way. It's cool.
like an idiot, I basically conformed to what they wanted and stopped asking questions. I stopped analysing. And the whole basic central philosophy was don't think, don't actually, because your mind's going to keep giving you doubts. It's basically because your mind's going to make you think, this is a load of rubbish. I don't like what this guy is saying. Where's all this money coming from? Where's he getting all these planes from? The sort of questions that most people's minds would actually ask if they're not actually already a member of the cult. But we had to stop thinking, basically, so we weren't allowed to think that. We just had to feel the emotional waves of joy, basically, about how wonderful life in the cult was. And most of the talks were basically about how horrible our lives were before we joined the cult, about being bullied or taking drugs or attempting suicide. And so it's just like outside the cult, absolutely miserable, horrible existence. Inside was this kind of very artificial kind of utopia that we kind of lived in, except when they decided they would deliberately bring you down so you'd have to claw your way back up again. And you weren't allowed to be happy for too long, so that's very much how it works. It's very much.
You're going after, yeah.
It's very much a carrot and stick thing. Basically, they would basically offer you the carrots and then hit you with the stick when you got too close to the carrots. So you were kind of constantly knocked back just as before you actually got to where you felt you wanted to be. The first few months with it were incredibly happy and very nice, and there's a lot of really nice people in a cult. The one I was in had some really nice friends. Some of them are still in there. Some of them obviously hate me now because I've become the Judas who kind of walked out and went on the air telling people how horrible the cult actually was. So I've only seen one person who was actually in the cult since I left, and he literally went across the street and ran away. Basically, they were scared of me. So
Well, Arthur, Arthur, I just said you don't know what they've said about you, but you'll have a vague idea, won't you? Yeah, so you'll have an idea of what the people who are the people who are running this shit show will have said about you.
I've seen them say similar things about others who've left or basically been pushed out to the margins of the thing. So I mean, I know the kind of things that they would have actually said. Basically, I mean, I remember basically because I went to the science fiction thing and basically dressed up in a toga because we had a toga party, and the photo of me in a toga was flashed all across the cult's actual web pages. Basically, like, why should we take this guy seriously? Look what he dresses like, as if I walk around the streets dressed in a toga anyway. It was for a song called having fun, but basically but they basically made me out to be some sort of eccentric crackpot who should never be taken seriously. No, that's the kind of thing that they will do. They will watch everything you're doing to find anything they can possibly exploit to throw against you.
I was listening and watching. Have you heard about there was a cult in the UK in the last few years called Lighthouse International?
Greetings, gentlemen. I'm back in the room.
I'll go. So, I don't know if you've heard about those that organisation, Lighthouse International.
Not many people I've heard the name actually.
Cult survivor from Pearce.
So they were a.
Yes, he was travelling, doing the whole.
Yeah, so they were a right. They weren't actually a cult, just as cults don't call themselves cults.
I should have started much earlier, but we won't have this little.
Yeah, gents.
Anything that
Marco.
bring the first kid itself.
Right. Right, just because sorry. So the Lighthouse. It's interesting what you just said, though, Arthur, because they present themselves as like a self-improvement organisation.
Yeah, that happens a lot. They're moving away from.
So these people who present themselves, these people who read a few self-improvement books and it completely screws with their heads. Yeah. And then they would have you on these like webinars for like 10 hours at a time. And it's just what you said about, it was like this kind of liberate yourself from it was almost like liberating yourself from this cancerous thing called thinking and cynicism and asking questions. But it's like asking questions was a form of toxicity. That's just the way this Lighthouse presents. So when you were saying that earlier, I was thinking, my God, that's a very simple. The whole thing about the key to sort of achieving the bliss, the eternal bliss that these cults promise. The trade-off is that you switch your brain off completely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, but you can if you lose the capacity to see bad things as bad things or bad people as bad people, yeah, then of course you're going to be euphoric and full of bliss, but you're also going to be full of shit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've certainly followed that for the time that I was actually involved. I can't believe some of the rubbish I was actually spouting to people. Some people probably don't believe the rubbish I'm spouting to them now, but it was nothing compared to the stuff I was coming out with at the height of my actual recruitment. I mean,
you're pretty sensible to me, Arthur. You're pretty sensible to me. You've obviously all programmed yourself quite well. Is that something you had to do when you left? Did you have to go through a conscious period of deprogramming yourself?
Pretty much so, yeah. I mean, basically, I went back into full-time education, so I left school without too much money. I left school soon after my dad died. My dad died in 1978 of a heart attack. He was only 49, just literally dropped dead on the spot. But then that was kind of catastrophic. He was just like a month before his 50th birthday. And I think that was kind of the catalyst that kind of led me to state of mind for the cult. I mean, basically, because the cult was promising itself as a new family community, and I was like, kind of almost looking at the Guru Maharaji, the guy who actually ran the cult, who still runs it, as a kind of surrogate father figure. And so basically, I kind of got involved through that. Basically, I mean, my involvement kind of got very, very more and more intense as I kind of went along. Basically, we used to actually go and queue up to actually sort of kiss his feet. So I mean, there'd be 8,000 of us in a row, literally just waiting to kiss his feet, because that was like the ultimate kind of divine moment where we'd actually make contact with the guru and actually get to kiss his feet. I mean, as soon as our lips made contact with his feet, we were dragged off very quickly, to stop anyone kind of grabbing hold of his feet or trying to stay with him.
Or anything.
Arthur, forgive me if you've already said this, but I just want to know, what were your living conditions like? How many meals a day were you given? What kind of bed sleeping arrangements, showers, toilets, that kind of thing?
Right, but I wasn't actually involved in the ashram side of it, which is the people who actually lived in with the cult. I actually commuted home between.
Right.
I was going to the ashrams every day, which is ashram basically is a Hindu temple, and they basically use their houses that they actually put in each city as their ashrams until they actually closed them all down in the late 80s. But basically, I used to commute in and basically stay at the ashrams all day, and then come home on the last bus, and sometimes I'd have to walk because I'd missed the last bus.
Was this in the UK?
This is in the UK, mostly in Manchester, which is where I actually had most of my recruitment. I didn't move to Preston until 2016, so it'd be quite a long way after I actually left the cult, before I actually left Manchester. So I mean, I was actually still living at home, and mostly with my mum, and basically she could actually see my deterioration, because first I was going to the meetings and then coming back, it was like, you won't believe what these crackpots are doing. It's like, and I'd kind of describe what they were doing, and then gradually I was like, coming home, it's like, this is really wonderful. And I was trying to get her to actually come along and join, and it was like she could see that transition and change in me from somebody who basically like thought these are a bunch of nutters, I'm just kind of going along to see what they're up to basically becoming pretty much an ardent fanatic. But when she saw my completely, once I actually started, because you had to do you had to use meditation techniques. There were 4 meditations you had to practice for an hour each morning and an hour each night. First thing when you got up, and the last thing before you went to bed. So basically, I was an absolute zombie by the time I finished. I mean, literally, I was going into absolute catatonic states. I mean, she couldn't talk to me. I mean, she said people came to the house, stayed for half an hour, and then left. And basically, I just didn't communicate with them. I was just literally like a zonked out figure in the corner, like a statue. We just couldn't to actually switch off from that state. And then I just kind of totally zoned out. That was still going on actually after I left the cult for quite a while as well.
How much of
that habit, that pattern?
Yeah. How much of that do you attribute to your mental state, and then how much of that do you attribute to maybe I don't know, malnourishment, not getting the correct amount of sleep? I mean, obviously, mentally it's gonna weigh, but do you think physically as well, you perhaps weren't taking the best care of yourself?
Physically, I was okay. I mean, I've kind of started thinking about my mental state at the time as being a major factor, because obviously I wasn't trusting my own mind. So I was afraid to think. I was actually kind of almost in a war with my own mind. Anytime I found myself thinking, I'd start going to the very, very intense kind of breathing techniques that were some of the meditations to kind of switch my mind off. So it was almost like I was at war with myself. I didn't trust myself to be allowed to think. I was actually scared of my own mind for the time that I was actually in the cult. It's one of the main reasons why one of the first things I did was go back into education. I got my A-levels and then went into university. I was actually at Bolton University, or Bolton Institute of Higher Education as it was known then, and did a philosophy and literature degree because I wanted to get my mind back. They weren't particularly educated.
Well, the thing with cults is, of course, they appoint themselves as your surrogate thinker, don't they? That's one of the very first things they do. Because there's a couple of things that occurred to me as you made the point about where you were at in your life at the time that the cult and you kind of collided, and you were kind of ripe for it because of the circumstances. It's not always a case of people having had loss or tragedy in their lives, is it? In terms of that sense, though, but it does seem to me that things like this are appealing to people who maybe are a bit lost, they're lacking purpose, they're lacking direction.
Yeah.
I was just going to say these predatory things do come along. The other thing that I wrote down, the question that I wrote down, was obviously you've had this experience early on where you're asking a lot of questions and they threaten to throw you out. Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, if it had been me, like I'd have walked out. I'd have just said, "Well, sod you then. I think you're a lot of crap anyway." But then there's that thing though, isn't there, about being thrown out of something? Being sacked from something. I'm just wondering what because you could have just walked away at that point, couldn't you? I'm just thinking, what was that? What it was? Was that the thing that kept you in? It's all like a shameful thing, isn't it? When you get booted out of anything.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a fear. I think basically the realization that if I leave this, people are going to tell me, well, you were really stupid to get it in the first place, and obviously you didn't make a success of it. And the cult's going to hate you because you failed to actually to actually stay the distance with them. And they were always telling us that horrible things happen to people if we didn't stay in the cult.
Like what?
Basically that we'd take ill, that basically we'd get run over, we'd end up on drugs, we'd end up having breakdowns, committing suicide, and so on. So
oh my God.
So you're always afraid of being too much outside of things. I've lost my picture off here. I don't know what's happened to my picture.
The sun's gone down, mate.
If we can get it back, great. But if you want to go audio only, that's cool.
As it is, Arthur, you're doing just fine, mate.
Curtains a bit. Hang on. I'll open the curtains. I'll just stick a light on. Actually, I've got the lights up at the moment.
This is fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm still here. Basically, so I'll kind of go over some aspects of my mental state and so on for that. Okay.
I was going to ask you this. Cults generally are known for love bombing people on arrival. Love bombing is a technique as well that abusive people of all types are known for using. And one of the telltale signs that you are in an abusive situation is actually that in the beginning it was all too perfect and all too nice, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But as you say, basically, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To get the hell out.
Yeah, that is what love bombing is. So if you know anybody who's been in an abusive relationship, male or female, you'll know that the other person, the person who ended up abusing them, was an absolute saint or angel or whatever in the beginning.
Oh yeah.
A lot of employers operate that way.
Well, you mean the job interviews where they promise you like a career and you'll be earning twice what you're on.
Yeah. We're like a family here. Well, that just increases my chances of being domestically abused.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those awful lies that appeals to the fat and dumb and happy, so in quotes, about the thing about the workplace family. But some people like to believe that. I don't know if. But yeah, so I was going to say, so one of the things, Arthur, that goes on in cults a lot is exploitation of various forms. So I did hear something about Divine Light that there was a bit of financial exploitation going on. So I just wondered what your experience of that were.
Yeah, well, I never had much money to give them. I mean, the few times I actually got jobs, basically, they would expect a sizable chunk out of my income. But mostly I did work for them for nothing. We used to basically go around selling bags of potatoes to people's houses and homemade first aid kits that some of our members actually made. And we'd go around in a van, door to door, and sell them. They were perfectly good first aid kits. They were basically just a box with a cross on and a few bandages and plasters in that people could use. I mean, but we used to tell people we were doing it for the St. John Ambulance Brigade. So basically, they used to think that we were a bona fide charity, and of course,
Wow.
we weren't going to go around and tell them, "Hi, we're from the Divine Light Mission." Basically, because we would have just got doors slammed in our faces. But that's all the money we raised from them it went straight back into the cult coffers.
Yeah, please buy our stuff. The Guru needs a sports car. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was no money collected. There was nobody keeping accounts of any of the money collected. So even some of because we never really saw the good because he was in Malibu in Florida. If you look online, you'll see some pictures of his house. It looks like Tony Stark's place in the Avengers movies.
All right. Okay.
It's a
He was in Malibu finding himself.
yeah, probably drinking Malibu as well. And,
Yeah. But you know, a lot of religions actually ban drinking and things like that, don't they? What were the rules? Were there any rules around food and drink in there or not?
vegetarian and not drinking, but basically, I never actually stopped basically being a meat eater because I was just too addicted to meat. And ironically, I actually was not drinking when I first joined because I actually had hepatitis basically just beforehand. So I was actually told to stay off alcohol for about 8 months anyway. But basically, I noticed how many other people were drinking, so I just thought, as soon as my period of having to stay off for medical reasons was over, I just started drinking again. Basically, but but everybody was anyway. I think it's a rule that most people just ignored. I mean,
They just waited till no one was looking, right? Yeah.
But nobody really seemed to bother. I mean, the main thing is basically a lot of people just assume. Basically, you read a lot of books on cults. It's usually from somebody who's been very close to the guru. I mean, I only actually got to speak to him personally once. Most of the time, I was actually in contact with the local coordinators, and they were actually the ones basically handing out the rules and how we actually do things. So. Basically, they would usually say that the instructions came from the top, from the guru, but he was never there. So basically, all we had was the local contacts, and they were like, we always used to see basically that if they were making us do something we didn't particularly like, that basically the guru would do something horrible to them when he found out basically how mean they were being. But basically, I don't think he cared less, and probably half the time he was telling them to do it anyway. But a lot of the money that we raised, I mean, they were spending themselves. I mean, basically, one of them basically didn't seem to have a job, went out and bought himself a Cherokee Range Rover. Basically, one day because he'd actually seen one when we ran a stall at Glastonbury in 1983, the Rock Festival, and basically the Cherokee there. And about a month after he came back, he suddenly bought one. He's like because he liked the car that he saw at Glastonbury.
It would have been a very early Glastonbury, that 83, wouldn't it?
83. It started in 1971. Ironically, the Guru's first appearance in the UK was at the very first Glastonbury Rock Festival. He stormed on the stage and got hold of the microphone, started yabbering down that until they actually cut the mic off and threw him out.
He's an interesting character because he's kind of like he's kind of the black sheep of the family, isn't he? As well, is that right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, basically, he was the youngest of 4 sons in the family. His father was the guru before him. He actually had the same name, Guru Maharaji in India. He wanted to bring the cult over to the UK, but he was too old to actually do it. But basically, when he died, it should have been the oldest of the 4 sons who actually basically was going to inherit the role. But young Maharaji actually jumped on the stage at the thing and suddenly declared to everyone that he'd seen the light and that he was the one, basically, and the rest of the family just had no choice but to conform. And they had to follow him for a while. And basically, it was only after he'd been running things for a few years, up to, I think, 1973, when he suddenly married an American air hostess called Marilyn Johnson. And basically, his mother objected very strongly to that because he was supposed to be celibate. And suddenly, basically, he's got an American wife, and eventually he had 4 children to her. And he rechristened as Durgaji, which is the name of a Hindu goddess. And the Hindu, right across India, he was actually ostracized for taking their name in vain to actually give it to a woman that basically a lot of Hindus actually regarded as a strumpet. Basically, I mean, she was just a follower of his who got close to him enough to get intimate with him. She ended up having 4 children to him. He makes a great deal about the fact that his 4th child was born on Christmas Day, and so
I presume that means his first 3 words.
well, no, they were born on other days, and yeah, I mean, but basically his mother personally disowned him. I mean, it always makes me laugh when I hear the Monty Python line, "No, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy." I actually did follow a Messiah who literally fits in that bill.
Yeah. For anyone else who didn't know what a strumpet was, it's another word for harlot. Yeah.
So yeah,
like to ask,
I mean, it's unusual to be an atheist who actually knows where God lives.
Good, Arthur, do you have a question, mate?
Yeah, I do. Arthur, was there ever a time when you felt like you were part of this movement really enhanced your life?
Sorry, what was the time when I felt?
Yeah, I mean, was there ever a time when you felt like, yeah, this is actually making my life better? This is enhancing.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, is that better?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, come on, I'll just start again.
Was there ever a time where you felt like being part of this movement just made your life a lot better?
Yeah, in the early days, probably about the first year or so that I was actually in, I felt like I'd really kind of made it and found the right people and everything was hunky-dory. Because, I mean, the first job I actually got was because basically they tipped me off that there was a job going. I mean, they only did it because basically they wanted a share of the money that I might make doing it. But
what were you doing?
They got me a department store in Manchester. But so that was literally the first job I actually had. I was out of work for about a year and a half. I mean, this was actually the time when there was 3.5 million unemployed. When the boys from the black stuff kind of period. So that was very much on the attendant at that time. So basically, I mean, and suddenly I was in this kind of area where I actually had friends and people who would actually make things happen for me and seemed to actually care. But gradually, they kind of pulled back on that. And you realise that basically that they're keeping you at arm's length and that they can switch off the charm just as easily as they can switch it on. It becomes a weapon that they can manipulate you with. When you crash, you really crash. I mean, it was like the absolute depths of despair.
Yeah, just thinking there. The other flip side of that one, Arthur. Was there a point at which you finally decided in your own head, this is a load of BS and I need to get out of it.
Yeah, there was actually probably towards the end of the mid '80s, basically around about '83, beginnings of '84. There started to be a lot of infighting in the group, and a lot of people were getting jealous of one another. They found out they were actually doing seats at some of the events where the guru came to visit. Were actually being sold to high figures, and basically there was a lot of elitism and snobbery, and it was only the same handful of top dog people who were actually getting a lot of more privileges. They were allowed not to do the meditation because it was the meditation that really kind of sort of like blocks you free. You're thinking up a lot. It was almost a kind of hyperventilational breathing. You were actually sort of over flooding the brain with oxygen to kind of get high, and that was having a quite negative effect on me. And I was kind of beginning to kind of notice that there was a lot more fighting among the members. And there was a girl I actually managed to talk into coming along to some of the meetings, and we were kind of getting friendlier with one another. And I mean, she started wanting me to skive off and go to the pictures and go for walks and go to the parks with her and do other stuff. And then they started turning on her as though she was actually luring me out of the cult. So at one point, somebody actually walked past and shoulder charged her into a wall. Which I didn't actually see about it later. And I tore into quite a few of them. I went actually, because you gave talks on what you were experiencing from the Sat Sanctuary, and I literally talked about it from there. I said, like, basically, if I ever see anybody do this to my friends or to anybody else, you will answer to me, and basically, and that caused a lot of friction. And then the last straw was when I went to the guru himself came on tours around Britain. I saw him in various places. But the last time I saw him was actually at the Albert Hall in London, and early '85. And they had a question and answer session, and you're supposed to actually ask permission. I didn't know you're supposed to ask permission to ask him a question. But I just put my hand up because I was actually ended up sat near the front because they'd actually, because there were so many complaints about the fixed seating and people getting the front seat. They actually randomised the seating. I actually got a seat on the second row from the front, right in front of him. So when it came to the question and answers, I actually put my hand up, and he asked me, well, "What do you want to know?" And I said, "How important is it for you that your followers love each other as much as they love you?" And at first, I was like absolutely overawed and shaken by the fact that I'd got to speak to him at all. But his answer was like, "I don't want you to do that. I just want you to love me. You shouldn't be loving each other. You should be detached from each other and focused on me. It's not about everybody else. It's about you and me." And at first, I was too elated by the fact that I'd actually spoken to him and laughing at the egotism and basically everybody kind of like hating the man. And then people started having to go at me because I'd spoke to him. And then I thought, that answer was wrong. I mean, basically, I do want to be with everybody else. It's the people around me that are my friends. He's never. I mean, this is literally the first time I spoke to him in 4.5 years. It's all the other people around me that have actually made me the cult member that I actually am, and they're the people I actually care about. The actual rank and file members, I still care about a lot of the people I actually knew then. And that was kind of like the breaking point for me. I did actually kind of drift in and out for meetings. They actually stopped us having meetings in our own houses. We used to actually have informal meetings at our own houses as well as the formal public meetings and the big meetings that we actually had with the group and at the ashrams. We'd have informal gatherings at each other's houses, and I mostly went to those. So if you didn't go to one, they just assumed you were at another one because there'd be 3 or 4 around the town. So basically not being there at all, they just didn't seem to notice. And basically, so I kind of drifted in and out for a while, and then I'd stay away for about 3 or 4 weeks and then go back. And the last time I went, I just thought, I'm just bored. I just found the whole thing just dull.
The thing is, I suppose people ask sometimes, what's the difference between, you made a very good joke about, your God's still alive, yeah? When you did the talk about that. And what's happened here is, if someone said, what's the difference between religion and a cult? And I've probably got more time for religion than you have, right? But in a cult, if a living, breathing, shitting human is asking you to worship him, as one adult is asking another adult to worship them, not even love them with a small L, but kind of the unconditional love that like maybe a kid has for their mum and dad before they grow up. Yeah. That is like run for the hills stuff, isn't it? There's a big red flag, and it would have been anyone who was thinking in that audience like that. It's a big pertinent question you asked, Arthur.
Absolutely, yeah. Those are the kind of warning signs that you need to look out for when anybody like that is actually approaching you, whether it's a Jehovah's Witness on the doorstep or sometimes they'll run food trucks basically and things like that, like making it look like they're really caring for the homeless and stuff like that. And you should ask yourself, who are these people? What are they doing? But also, if it's so evasive about who they are, that's a red flag in itself. Look them up, basically. Because virtually any of the big cults have got. There's people on the web who actually have been involved with it, and you can talk to them and see what they've experienced and what they think about it all, and you can get an idea of what the critics have got to say. Another question you could actually ask them is like, if there's one reason why I shouldn't join you, what would it be? And most of them, if they actually say, no, there's no doubts, there's no reasons why you should doubt us at all, that's a red flag, because everybody's got their critics, everybody's got some reason why, but any area of improvement, and cults won't admit that they're not perfect.
It's interesting. But it's interesting point that Largo made about employers. Actually, and I'm not saying that employers are cults, right? But it's interesting because you're right that that nothing's perfect for everybody, and anything that is pertaining to being perfect for everybody, is like, you're right, absolutely right. Run for the hills, because we're in massive red flag territory. Anything. This very show, this show trying to take in this won't be for everybody. There'll be people who watch it who don't like it. That's fine. Yeah. And
I'm going to glaring right at me.
Sorry? Sorry?
No, I'm just going to try the other light because that's one glaring right in my face.
Okay, mate.
Yeah, okay. No worries.
I'm going to put the other light on instead of this one.
No bother, mate.
I think I've just knocked the phone over.
How many have we got live watching?
We've got a handful of people dipping in and out. Most people who watch the show watch it after the fact. Far more people watch it. Far more people watch the show after it's gone out. It's on YouTube than they do live. We get a small number of people dipping in and out of the show as it's on.
People will catch it later on, I'm sure.
Yeah. So just before we wrap this bit of the show up, then Arthur, what would you think in terms of if there's obviously a danger of anybody getting caught up in a cult? What would be the things you'd encourage people to think about, look for, or the red flags that we've discussed here?
Yeah. Find out who the cult actually is. Some of them will try to hide that from you, which in itself is a problem. If they're actually trying to not tell you who they are. I mean, the cult I was in was actually calling itself the Divine Understanding Order when I first joined it. There was no such organisation. They didn't want me to find out some of the scandals that were associated with them. And I was actually in the cult for about 8 months before I'd learned any of it and even found out what their real name was.
Right.
So the more invasive they are, I mean, don't be afraid to ask questions. If they're actually reluctant, if they don't like the fact that you're asking questions or they're avoiding answering them, I mean, obvious questions like, who are you? What do you do with the money that you make? Basically, how do you handle dissatisfied customers? Because there will be people who've looked in and not liked it. What do they do with them? Some cults will really go on the attack and go on the warpath. I mean, Divine Light Mission tends to be a bit of an ostrich. It'll stick its head in the sand and hope that the fuss will go away. But Scientologists will go straight for your throat. Basically, they've been very litigious with their critics.
Lighthouse were like that. The recent one in the UK, the recent big cult in the UK, Lighthouse. They were smearing and slandering people, and they were suing people left, right, and centre as well.
Darren, Arthur, did you know that in Preston, not that long ago, in the 1990s, there was a Christian cult called the Jesus Army?
Oh, right. I've heard of the Jesus Army. I didn't know they were active in Preston.
They were on Gas. They were on it. Well, they're not there now, but they were based out of a house on Garstang Road on the way, which is the main road on the way to Lancaster.
Yeah. They used to be quite big in the 80s and 90s. I mean, you used to see them with very psychedelic vans. I mean, they're almost like the Scooby-Doo van. It
was sort of like camo, but multicoloured.
Yeah.
There's a documentary you can watch on them on YouTube. I watched it by chance, but I do remember them.
Yeah.
The Jesus Army, they were huge in Preston in the 1990s.
Yeah, they were quite big though. I don't know if they're still going, or at least in the same form now. But yeah,
they got closed down. I think there was a scandal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say on YouTube for fear of getting shadow banned or something what the scandal was, but
there might not have been one. Yeah.
You can imagine what the scandal was, if I'm not going to say it.
Well, it'll be one of two things. It'll either involve money going missing or something more sordid than that.
Something more sordid.
Right. Just on an unrelated note, Arthur, have any good books been released recently? Have you got any good books that you can think of that you want to tell us about?
Well, yeah, there's. I'm reading a lot of science fiction at the moment. I've actually discovered a whole new genre of science fiction called solar punk, which is basically a kind of utopian kind of version of steampunk, except basically it's kind of much more geared up to putting the environment right, and it tends to actually have a happier ending than steampunk tends to, and cyberpunk destructive, negative things, but solar punk is much more positive and utopian in its outlook. So it's more about people making a difference to their communities. But of course, on books, basically, I'm actually. I mean, since I actually got out of the cult, I mean, I did my degree and then I started my writing. I've been doing quite a lot of that with my poetry. Some good success with my short stories. But it's mainly my pub sign books, which
Well, that's
which is
difficult
actually
art to
one of
perfect
my
short
There
stories.
you go. There you go. So Artie, you've got your pub sign books out there. That's the one. What's it called,
Lovely.
mate?
that one's called "Watch the Signs, Watch the Signs." That
Yeah.
kind of ties in with my interest in science fiction. I've dropped the other book somewhere. I can't pick it up at the moment without. But there's a second book called. It's just called basically Pub Signs, and that's. Oh, hang on, I've got it. Yep, there it is.
Pub signs. Yeah, there you go.
It's called Pub Signs. That's a more general book on pub signs. There's copies available of that on Amberley Press, and you can also find them on Amazon. If you put my name in Apple on Amazon, you get copies of that for $15.99.
Lovely.
I've been collecting photos of pub signs for about the last 10 or 12 years. Basically, it's just
Arthur,
become.
may I ask?
Yeah.
As a Prestonian and a seemingly a connoisseur of pubs and pub signs, what would be your favourite pub in Preston?
My big favourite is the Vinyl Tap, which is basically a pub. Basically, I actually do a lot of my performance poetry in. It actually also hosted the book launch for me as well, with the Lord Mayor of Preston actually turned up for that as well, which is fantastic.
About 12 years ago, I was working in Preston, and my favourite used to be the Market Tavern or the Black Horse.
Yeah, the both of those are still going, both good pubs.
Black Horse. If I had to vote for a favourite, I do like Vinyl Tap after. It's a good pub, a good music venue as well. But if I had to vote for a favourite, it would be the Black Horse in Preston, anyway.
I remember many years before that, I went to watch a band upstairs in the Black Horse.
Nice. Yeah, they have actually reopened the upstairs part. They're doing quite a lot of gigs up there now.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a gig at the Ferret on Sunday. There's an open mic spoken word event at the Ferret on Sunday. I'm going to that one.
So it's an open mic it's an open mic event. So if you do whatever, if you're any spoken word artist, so that you can just turn up then, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a free event, so yeah, you just turn up, put your name on the list, and you're good to go.
Got a poem or a story, or a poem about being in a cult, maybe. Yeah, get yourself to the Ferret on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, keep it short because basically there'll be other artists on as well. Maybe do like 5 minutes or something. But you can do. I can usually get through 3 or 4 poems like the one I just did in that time. Basically, yeah. I mean, as well as my writing, I mean, of course, basically, I was a member of the SEAL, not English Civil War reenactors for a long time as well.
Fantastic.
Were you a cavalier or a roundhead then?
A bit of both, actually. Basically, we were actually in the Scottish regiment, and we kind of, because they fought in the Civil War, so we actually got to fight on both sides at different stages. Eventually, we transferred over to Philip Skippen's regiment, which was a dedicated member of the New Model Army under Cromwell. So I became a more hardline parliamentarian. I was a pikeman, which basically meant I was fighting with a 14-foot battle lance, basically rather than the guns. But it was great. I enjoyed it. I was doing that for about 10 years. Absolutely loved it. I basically got to travel around the country, hitting people with sticks and drinking lots of beer.
There was a major battle in Preston.
There was actually 2 major Civil War battles in Preston, but we didn't actually get to
there was. In fact, there's
the nearest to go to Preston was Cambridge.
Yeah, there's a bridge on the way to Clitheroe which had the sides of it knocked off so they could get the cannons over.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It's still there, though, the bridge. You can actually still see the bridge. You can drive past it on the way to Clitheroe.
I
think it might be Ridchester way.
It's possible. I think it is out that way, yeah. I mean, there's certainly a lot of roundhead activity in the region. And I think there was a big battle between here and Wigan as well. Wigan Lane and Preston area.
Well,
especially up
Lancashire
at
was
the
a
end.
staunch Catholic area.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, Preston actually means the priest's town, so that's where the name
It does.
actually comes.
It does.
I'm pretty sure the butter pie is a Preston thing, and that's to do with the old no meat on Fridays, isn't it, as well?
Possibly,
Well,
Yeah.
may well be.
Yeah.
And,
So tell you what. Yeah, go on, mate.
and of course, yeah. So, well, I mean, I kind of wrapped up with that when I kind of moved over to Preston. I was hoping to kind of get back involved with it, but about the time when COVID was kicking in, my health took a turn for the worse. Not with
Yeah.
COVID, I actually went down with bowel cancer.
Oh, God.
So
Yeah.
I had a long time off with major surgery for that. I have to wear a stoma bag for life now for the rest of my days. Basically means I can't do a lot of more physical stuff that I was kind of doing, like sealed knot activity. I mean, I'm in my 60s now as well, so I mean that kind of running around is probably not wise for me anyway. I've got a hernia, which I'm actually. They've told me they're going to actually give me a date for going in to get that operated on and get rid of it. Basically, so it's about the size of a melon now. It's just above where the stoma actually is. So I'll be quite happy to get rid of that. And the rest is all basically to do with my writing.
Well, look, in terms of the outlook for that, you're sort of, you're over the worst of it, and it's, you should be okay going forward. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, it's affected my mental health a bit. I mean, I've actually got anxiety and depression from it, which in some ways I can almost trace back to the cult as well. I mean, it's only when I was going through some of the counselling sessions I had from the anxiety that they kind of asked me about things earlier on in my life, and I started to make the connection that maybe there's been traces of it even left over from when I was actually in the cult. There's still a part of me that kind of feels a bit dumb forever getting involved in all that, but at the same time, the cult made me, because basically coming out of it was rediscovering my mind and being able to think again. I started to find my own identity through my writing. So in some ways, the cult did me a favour.
Well, there's a thing I've noticed this thing with things, Arthur, right? And it's something about repression. So when something is repressed over a long period of time, I'll give you a very good example of this, right? If you've ever kept something a secret, right? You ever bottled something up, whatever the something is, and then one day you blurt it out. And sure as eggs are eggs, you can bet on there being a burst of verbal diarrhea that follows it, because you've repressed it for so long. There'll be a burst of verbal, and it's like that with your capacity to think for yourself. So that it was repressed and switched off for a few years, and it's kind of come roaring back with a vengeance right afterwards. It's kind of it's come back on steroids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm coping quite well with most things. I mean, my mum died recently, actually in June, from dementia.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's quite horrible to actually see, but I mean, at the same time, I actually coped reasonably well. I mean, considering I've got depression and stuff, I was making long commutes back to Manchester to visit her while she was in the nursing home, seeing different stages of her deterioration. And I think if it had happened 2 years ago, I would have just cracked up completely. I would have just been a complete mess.
You're a tough man, Arthur.
I think I've managed to keep it together quite well.
Very well. In the circumstances, very well indeed. And
you're a tough man.
Kudos to you, fella. We're just coming up to an hour. So thanks for being with us, Arthur. Thanks very so much for your time, mate.
I've really loved listening to you, Arthur. Thank you so much.
I just wanted to do a couple of other things before we went. And one was, has anyone got anything they want to talk about from in the week, just very quickly? Anything that's happened in the week, or anything that's come up, or?
I was going to say, have you considered the prospect of any more riots now the weather is deteriorating?
Riots. My view on those riots, Largo, was that those riots were heavily aided by agent provocateurs.
People are still angry.
Yeah, well, people. There are a lot of angry and confused people about, but I don't think those riots were on the level. I think the big giveaway was when those advertised riots were attended by virtually nobody. I'm pretty sure there were planted troublemakers in those quote unquote riots. Yeah. And I don't think there is a massive organised far right in the UK. I think that's a load of crap. I think that stuff that the government's putting out about, as if like there's some sort of massive version of the 1970s National Front in the UK now. There isn't. There just isn't. There might be a lot of confused people. There might be a lot of pissed people on the streets. But this thing that called everybody far right. It's just silly. It's just childish. So Arthur.
I'm just kind of glad Preston missed most of it because I wouldn't have liked to have got caught up in any of it. I get caught up in a riot once in Manchester. A pretty terrifying thing to actually find people around me just literally smashing windows, and the police actually damn nearly kettled me. Basically, and I was just trying to walk through the middle of it to try and get to a bus stop. Basically, but eventually one of the coppers actually said, like, no, he's clearly nothing to do with it, let him go, and I was allowed to go on my way. But it was pretty terrifying to actually see what was going on, and it was just carnage. And most people were just literally out on the take. I don't think there was. I can't even remember what they were rioting for or what started it off. But most people were clearly just of it.
It's like though, Arthur. It's like a lot of these things. Just they require a kind of spark on legs, don't they? Because they need that person who is either brave or stupid or intoxicated enough to be that first person who throws that first brick, who sparks that first fire, whatever, and then everybody else.
Your state operative is.
Yeah, so then that's where everyone else piles in behind it. There's a reluctance. If you get a group of people, there's a reluctance to be that first person who causes the trouble for making sense.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty stupid knowing how much CCTV coverage there is. I mean, most of them got caught just simply because all they've had to do is look them up on the cameras and identify them. And it's difficult to say you didn't do anything when they've got footage on film of you actually doing it. They've got no defence. I mean, it's crazy. They're not organized.
Yeah. In terms of cameras per person, I'm pretty sure we are like one of the most spied upon countries in the world, in terms of surveillance and things like that. So you're right. I mean, I just watched the footage and I thought, my God, you've been framed at a makeover,
Yeah.
But one of the quick things I want to pick up, like we were talking about Sid Vicious in the week, the wrestler who recently died, not the bass player from the Sex Pistols. Do you have a few things to say about Sid Vicious as well?
He's for a first time I ever encountered him was when he was, or I ever saw him on TV. He was in a tag team called the Skyscrapers. I had the pleasure. I'm one of the few people I actually had the pleasure of seeing him wrestle at as it was then called Blackburn Ice Rink.
Right.
Later on the night.
Was that in WCW?
Yes, this is in WCW.
Right.
Later on that night was when he had the infamous incident with Arn Anderson. They got in a drunken fight and he stabbed him with some scissors. Sadly, that hotel, which I've looked for, is now a housing estate, so I can never go there. And a couple of years ago, I was going to go in there on a pilgrimage and just having a beer. This is the very bar where Sid Vicious stabbed Arn Anderson. Unfortunately, it's now a housing estate, so I can never do that. But probably my most vivid memory of him is probably WrestleMania 8, where I was convinced he was going to beat Hulk Hogan, and I think he hit him with like 3-4 power bombs, but it never happened. And,
Go on, Arthur.
I don't follow the wrestling at all myself much. I mean, basically, I do wonder why they actually borrow names that have already been used by somebody else. I mean, obviously, Sid Vicious is the name of the guy from the Sex Pistols. It always confused me with Stone Cold Steve Austin, because I mean, Steve Austin to me was the $6 million man. So it's like,
he was.
Like, just come up with an original name for yourself.
Yeah, well, we've got a mate called Steve Austin as well, haven't we? Sid Vicious. He was also called Sid Justice when he was a face, and Sid Vicious.
That was when he was in '96 when he had the match against Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, and
probably everyone remembers him most for Survivor Series.
well, I remember him for throwing Hulk Hogan out of the Royal Rumble in 1992 when Flair won
He
it.
did.
Right, and that was around the time that Hulk Hogan, it was the guy in the 80s. Arthur, even you've heard of Hulk Hogan, right? But everybody's heard about it. So
I used to feel like I was forced to like Hogan, and I resented him for it.
yeah, for sure. Well, that's the thing. It was being rammed down people's throats from about 1984 or 5 onwards. Hulkamania, say your prayers, eat your vitamins. Our vitamins became like locker room slang for steroids, and it was a big in-joke about
Orals or injectables.
Yeah, because Hogan was a big steroid user. You don't get that physique by eating prawns, do you?
No.
I remember him more from his TV and film career rather than the wrestling.
You watched all of that. Oh my god, it must have been like being back in the cult, mate.
It was Rocky.
Pretty bad. He did like a night rip-off. I think it was called Thunderbolt or something. It was like
Thunder in Paradise. Thunder in Paradise as well.
It was pretty terrible.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Well, the thing was, by 92, you're right, Michael. By 92, everyone's getting a bit tired of Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania. And actually, when The Undertaker beats him at Survivor Series, I think Hogan won the rematch on Tuesday in Texas. But when The Undertaker buries him on Survivor Series, the crowd actually pops and goes mad. Yeah, and when Sid Vicious throws him out the ring at Royal Rumble, the crowd absolutely goes mad. But when they went to do the VHS release, they put some very badly dubbed boos in. The crowd was actually cheering and gone crazy because Hogan had been thrown out and wasn't going to win.
I don't know if you remember this, but this is probably this is definitely Vicious's
You've gone quiet, mate.
In Sid Vicious's town, there was a one of his fans that had Down syndrome, and he used to bring him to the ring in WCW. I thought that was really nice. So Sid Vicious was actually a lovely man.
As is often the case, people who are heels in wrestling are often faces in real life, and vice versa. Look at Hulk Hogan. There was a great joke about Hulk Hogan.
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan, when they said Hogan was not averse to playing a heel, as he demonstrated in WCW, TNA, and most notably real life.
I mean, he's recently come out in support of Donald Trump, I think.
It continues. It goes on.
He was a committed anti-trade unionist in the sort of union breaker in the 80s, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a rat. Yeah. We'll tell that story. Maybe we'll try and get Jesse Ventura on the show one day.
You can't get hold of him. He's completely offline. You have to go through his agent.
Yeah, he's in Mexico, isn't he? He's still in Mexico.
He's makes it his life's mission to never own a mobile phone or be on or send an email, or you can't get hold of him unless he wants you to.
That's fair enough. Good way to live. What else was there? There was this nonsense about smoking outside pubs. That caught my ear. So I picked that up. So we obviously banned smoking inside pubs in about 2006-07, I think. And now that's in this story in the news about they want to ban smoking outside the pub, which I thought this was one of those strange things with. An authoritarian lunatic like Starmer saw the chance to shove people around. His eyes lit up, and they didn't think about it.
In the context of everything that's going on in the world, who cares? Firstly, and secondly, yes, it probably will. It probably won't do pubs any favors, but I'd say the real thing that's killing pubs isn't a smoking ban; it's the price of beer.
Well, it will go on.
Putting the beer prices up more than anything.
For sure. I mean, the thing that's been killing the pub trade more than any other single thing is the price of beer. Yeah. Right. But anything marginal like this that leads to a few pub closures, we can't be for it, can we? It's not a good thing.
I don't think
it also was a very, very messy thing about where the pub
It's going to
outside.
be winter.
Where does outside the pub start and the streets start?
The biggest problem for me with a lot of pubs is basically the public transport, because the pub wants to stay open till 11:30 midnight. The last bus is 10 o'clock, except on Sundays when the last bus is 9 o'clock. You've either got to get a taxi home, or basically in which case the pub immediately loses half of its people that are in it and has to shut early because there's no point in staying open and paying the staff to serve nobody. Or basically everyone's the only people who are going to benefit are the taxi drivers.
I mean, I've no doubt there is an attack on pubs because the establishment want to end communal spaces where you might by chance meet somebody and have a connection with them. They don't want that.
No, they don't. They basically, I mean, it's why they've shifted a lot of the work. There's no 9 to 5 work pattern anymore. People are on 6-2 shift and 2-10, which means they can't stay in the pub all night because they've got to be up about. To work at 6, you've got to be up at 4:30 the next morning because you've got to walk the dog before you go in. It's killing people's drinking patterns and it's killing the hospitality trade. Especially because we don't want people to
That was the fun.
Get to work.
Back in the day, when you have a Friday night and you go in and people were going in a pub on a Friday night after work, and they were drinking and smoking, but it was like entire shop floors would go into the same pub, wouldn't they? And you get half a dozen people who work together.
Yeah. I mean, they've stopped that kind of communal spirit going. I mean, we used to have the charabancs where the whole workforce would go on holiday together. I mean, that's virtually impossible now.
I mean, I don't hate that. That's not a thing anymore. I don't think I'd want to go on holiday.
Not with some of the people.
Not the entire workforce.
No.
Yeah. I want to go on.
The whole town would. I mean, Oldham would virtually cease to exist for a week. Well, everyone went to Blackpool.
Oh God!
I do. I think it's the love of Ada, which shows kind of that kind of showman. You couldn't do it now. You'd come back and find somebody would just go in and rob every house going.
Yeah, of course they would.
You talk about the days when you could leave your door open and people wouldn't go in and rob you blind. But those days are long gone, unfortunately.
Well, for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
So there was one other quick thing I wanted to mention. Yeah, I mean, one of the quick thing I wanted to mention was well done to the teams from Wales and Northern Ireland who actually qualified for Europe, the group stage of European football last night, because that's a first for both leagues. So that's the first time. That's the first time. Larn and the New Saints, well done both.
Getting the group.
Yeah, well, I think we can bring that up later. I'll send you that. I know you're not a football fan, are you? You're not a big football fan.
No, I don't know. They follow the game at all. I don't know who's playing who. I never know when Preston North End are playing, apart from when I see the fans going down the road.
Preston North End have drawn Fulham at home in the League Cup.
The third or fourth round of the League Cup. Yeah.
Do you know who the owner of Fulham is?
I don't know who the owner is. It used to be Mohammed Al Fayed, but who is it now?
No, you should know. It's Tony Khan, who is the owner of AEW.
Oh right, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Like I said, I know Mohammed Al Fayed used to own them. Yeah. So there's just only one other thing. It's totally up to you, this Arthur. Do you want to finish the show with another poem or not?
Yeah, I'll do you a quick poem. Oh,
lovely.
Just a quick way of saying thanks to everybody, and thanks to yourselves for running the show. And
thank you, Arthur.
Thank you for being here and for being you. Seriously, yeah.
Yeah, I've loved it.
And a big thanks to everybody, especially in Preston and Manchester, because you've all been amazingly kind to me in the last few years. But I'll finish off with
you get what you put out, Arthur.
You're welcome. I'll finish off with I started with one of my earliest poems. This is one of my most recent ones. It's called The DIY of Doom. Avengers assembled my wardrobe from IKEA. Calling them in seemed like a good idea. Thor had a hammer, that came in handy. Tony Stark fell off the wagon and drank all my brandy. Ant-Man read the small print in the instructions. They were only half done when they had to save the world from destruction. Vision stuck around, but mostly wasted time watching television. The others came back having thwarted Ultron's latest attack. Scarlet Witch noticed the hinges were in the wrong place and hexed up a switch. Doctor Strange consulted the Necromonicon, but found no advice on how to put the panel on. That problem was solved by the Ghost Rider, while Peter Parker screamed when he spotted an actual spider. Black Widow moved it and laughed at him for being so pathetic. Nick Fury was a bit more sympathetic. Black Panther sorted out the coat hanger rail. Hawkeye eagle-eyed the missing final nail. He thought the job done when there came an awful crash. The wardrobe was reduced to splintered trash as Bruce Banner turned green, yelling, "Hulk smash!" I got a replacement wardrobe from the IKEA on the high street. Lucky for me, I'd managed to salvage the receipt. Hiring the Avengers left me a great deal of stress, anxiety, and fatigue. That's why this time I'm calling in the Justice League. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, Arthur.
Fantastic.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all your contributions on on cult survival, performance, and creativity and all that. So just you'll be at the Ferret on Sunday. You'll be at the Morecambe Poetry Festival in September.
Yeah, I'm in Vinyl Tap most Thursdays. I'm at I'll be at the Morecambe Poetry Festival in late, I think around about the 20th, 21st of September. With Pam Ayres and Mike Harding and Nigel Planer. And
right, there you go. Yeah, there you go. You're in esteemed company there, and you're going to hold up your pub signs book again. This is Arthur's book, Pub Signs. Yeah,
basically, this is the new one. This came out actually just in July. Basically, it's definitely try and get it actually on the camera. So basically, it's moving the wrong way there. There you go. I can pull it back enough to be able to let you see it. There you go.
There it is, Pub Signs. There you go. Yeah, get yourself on Amazon. Get yourself a copy of that. $15.99, isn't it? Yeah, money well spent.
It is. It is selling very well. I've actually sold about 20 copies now, and whatever Ambully Press are selling, the company who actually produced it for me. It's doing really well.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And remember, you're you're paying for something else. The book is completely free for tax purposes.
Yeah. You could pay me to actually go out and take the photos, because then I could actually have the expenses paid pub crawl.
The thing is, mate, I've sold stuff on Lulu and through PayPal and the like, and it's hard work. It's hard work, but I don't know what the threshold is when the taxman starts taking an interest, but I haven't hit it yet, so it's okay.
I think I've got a meeting with the DWP a week on Tuesday to discuss my earnings, because basically they will come to their attention sooner or later, because it has made the Lancashire Evening Post and some of the local press. So.
Yeah.
Sooner or later they're going to clock me. If I don't tell them, that they're going to find me, and then it'll be a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
You think the state have better things to do with its time, but so do they. Right, brilliant stuff. Thanks for all your contributions to tonight's show, Arthur. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming along.
Thank
you, Michael.
Thank you, Derek.
And we'll do it all again sometime, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Good luck with your future shows.
Thank you, mate.
You're welcome anytime.
You're welcome.
Cool. Right, Kate. That'll be us. Right. Night, everybody.
Good night, guys.
See you later.